Hi, everyone. So I'm very sorry about the last minute change of the course modality. These illnesses come rather suddenly, and I wasn't anticipating this when I was getting ready for the lecture this morning. So thank you so much for your understanding. As I said in the to-do list, this lecture will be provided to you asynchronously. So you can watch this at any time this week. I will mark the deadline for this to next Monday, but you have to complete the lecture before you can view the assignments for this week. So I'll get started on explaining some of the key concepts that I was hoping to explain to you in person today. So the first thing is we were obviously supposed to be voting on the best guess in the emoji today. I'll do that next week when we meet in person. Here's some emojis for me. If you can guess who I am, that's great. We'll talk about this also next week when we meet in person. But as you guys watch this lecture, I want you guys to also read the chapter 1 of your textbook, the Social Media for Strategic Communication. This is the required textbook for the class. Chapter 1 is rather dense. It talks about a lot of different definitions and history of social media, but it is very essential that we start off this class on the common ground and understanding what social media is. The first and foremost definition of social media, which, as I've said last week in class, is going through a lot of changes this particular time with the ownership changes and expectation changes that's coming from social media, which we will be discussing over the week. But the overall sort of the general definition of social media that we will be talking about in this class is it is based on the user experiences that generates contents that can exchange ideas and has the interactive feature, the social feature that the previous versions of other types of media did not have as much. That yes, there are other types of media that were interactive, say like radio and whatnot, but the characteristics of interactivity and the user generated content and the ability to mimic a real conversation, those characteristics are kind of at the upfront when we define social media. So for anything that we are thinking about in this class, if the platform has that element of social coming right at the front of it, right? That it's about making friends, it's about connecting with friends or meeting up with new friends and whatnot, we're looking at that as a social media. It is internet-based. As I say here on the slide, we're talking about a characteristic that is specific to Web 2.0. Web 1.0 was more of the traditional older type of new media being transferred over to the internet. The format was still very one way. There was no real-time interactivity. Web 2.0 was extremely different in that regards because the social aspect of the interactive aspect of it came at the forefront. And social media platforms, as we know today, are we're able to come to reality because of the changes in Web 2.0 that we have seen over the years. In your textbook, Dr. Freberg provides a very detailed definition of what we understand as social media. Do follow her on Twitter. I don't know if she's still on there. I'm guessing she is. But she is very active social media educator in the field of public relations, hence her book, as well as some of us educators who are very influenced by her work. These are the 4 kind of definitions that she provides in her textbook that I want you guys to kind of read along as you watch this lecture as well. It is first and foremost personalized. It's very online based. It's very network based. And as you can see here, we are talking about, I don't know if I can do a highlight here. Apparently I can't. So it's not just about interactivity. It's about information, dialogue, and relationship. Okay, this is where it comes extremely connected to what we know in public relations, right? That we have a persuasive role, we have an informative role. We're focused on creating dialogues between organizations and the key public, and also maintaining that relationship with our key public, right? That we're not only talking about numbers or marketing or sales, right? That we PR professionals or any type of communication that occurs under the context of public relation is more along these less tangible outcomes that that gets often overlooked, but has a very critical significance in the well-being of any organization. So it's personalized, it's online, and we're talking about the role of social media primarily being of these informative dialogue-based in relationship management. It's engagement, it's reaching and persuading and targeting key audiences across multiple platforms. Again, this is something that I talked about already when I was explaining the first definition that Dr. Freiberg had provided. And we're also talking about the ability for the users to actually create their own contents in a way to become social with the brands or other users. Right? We've seen Instagram takeovers. We've seen TikTok takeovers. I follow the Deutsche Grammophon album company because I'm a classical music fan. And Bruce Liu was the winner of the Chopin piano competition last year. And he took over their Instagram account for a week. That was hilarious, right? And you wouldn't think a genre such as classical music will kind of take that, but apparently that is possible. Right? So that's kind of the way that this company engages with the fans and key public across the globe to continue engaging and building that relationship with our key public. Okay, bringing the communities together. This is also a key characteristic of social media. Think about all those communities that came together on Facebook. One of my former PhD students had studied the closed private Facebook group for female and LGBTQ minority journalists and how they utilize that online space to create a support system. This is also something that's very unique to social media. Just some overview. Aside from some of the key importance of why we use social media, this is in fact one of the fastest quote unquote new media that reached 50 million users. Okay, I was able to update this statistics, but apparently Pokemon Go, for it to reach 50 million users, it only took 14 hours or so. So Facebook took under 9 months, internet took 4 years. I believe TikTok took less than 4 months, but there was, I can't recall the actual number of it. But it is reaching people quickly. It is the number one online activity worldwide. Despite every change that we're seeing right now in social media, this is still the primary channel that a lot of the companies can use to reach a diverse group of public frequently and quickly. LinkedIn, this is also a tool that we'll be talking about this semester when we're talking about the professional branding of ourselves, and we'll also have a workshop on this department-wide. This is still considered as one of the primary recruiting tool. Social media sites can initiate romantic relationship. The number of contents that we see on these social media platforms is just over the top, blowing our head. It's just so many, right? So despite all the changes that we're seeing right now and what we see and what we expect from social media, it is still one of the most powerful platforms, powerful media channels for public relations practitioners to be comfortable engaging with as well as communicating on. So like I said, the key aspect that social media, all the characteristics of social media that we have understood and we've been using so far is based on the key characteristics of Web 2.0, okay? Like I said a few minutes ago, Web 1.0 was it was pretty much a copy paste from everything that we've seen in other platforms. So online news meant that a print article was copy pasted into a website. Think about the older formats of website, right? There was less interactivity. Think about some of the outdated websites that you sometimes bump into, the not mobile friendly websites. That's a good example of what Web 1.0, that there's less two-way. It was much more similar in the format and the ability to communicate with the previous pre-internet types of media platforms. Web 2.0 came around with the technological changes. It provided a possibility for a real-time two-way communication. Email was the starting point of it, that it was much quicker than snail mail, right? And now we're talking about a real-time conversation that can happen. Because of that, the nature of it became more democratic, meaning that it was more conversation and dialogue based. It's very collaborative. Like I said, anyone can create a content, and we'll talk about the ethical implications of this. Anyone can create a content in a couple of weeks when we discuss diversity and ethics in the next couple of weeks, and think about all the issues that are happening, all the conversations that are happening with ChatGPT right now. I was talking about this in my other class just today, and because I was doing a research on it, I also found a lot of social media communicators' guide to using ChatGPT. So it is coming around, right? But the whole thing that this is possible is because with the Web 2.0, we're now dealing with a internet system that is more dialogic, that's more two-way, conversation-like, more dialogue-based, more interactive. And that needs to be sort of the essential kind of a baseline for anything that we do on social, that we don't want to sound authoritarian. We don't want to sound one way. We don't want to just like throw a content out there and never listen to any of the feedback, right? That any type of content that we put on social media, we need to be expecting some kind of feedback and and embrace that into the system. So that's kind of the key characteristic of the internet that enabled how we are currently using social media. This is a chart that Dr. Freberg uses to discuss how we define social media and what ways that we can think of social media. This is actually on page 9. So, and because the image on your textbook is so tiny, I'm also going to include this image into this video along with this video so that you can take a look at it as well. Now, I don't mean to tell you to memorize all this, or frankly, if we look at it now, some of them we don't even know what they are. But the idea behind it is that when we are thinking about which social platform to use, we need to have a clear idea of what our overall goal, if not objectives, are. Right? I always, in this class, I always use this example of Norwegian Salmon Company just starting an Instagram account. Why is this random Norwegian Salmon Company? Why does this company want to be on Instagram? What is it going to achieve? Why does the Deutsche Grammophon, a classical title company, why does that company want to be on Instagram? What kind of visual content would it be able to provide? What is the engagement outcome that it's looking for? What this conversation prism is trying to explain is that when we are using social media as a way to communicate our content, we need to think about what are the types of conversations that we want to create. What are the new ways that we can utilize this? What are the, like I said here, brainstorm new channels and ways to benefit from the social media, not just posting it out there and getting a like, right? That you can always be a little bit more creative on that. And you need to, in essence, study the landscape of what type of social media is used out there. What is the outcome? What is the ultimate goal? Why should Norwegian Salmon Company open an Instagram account? What is the landscape that they're entering? What is the current vibe on Instagram that could make this Norwegian Salmon Company make or break on Instagram? If they're going to break, why should they be there, right? So understanding the purposes and the strengths of some of these social media platforms can help you become a lot more creative in communicating your message. Okay, we're not going to go through everything here, but this is just to give you that idea that there's so many out there. For those that are making it, that are kind of, I think, on the outer side of this prism chart, you need to think of this as the starting point, as well as how you can become more creative in utilizing these different social platforms for different type of audiences or even the purposes. Because think of it now, I'm trying to find Twitter here. Yes, no, that's Skype. So Twitter used to be like here, right there. That is a blog, microblog. It's losing its users like crazy right now. People are flocking over to Mastodon or the Post or the Substack or Reddit. What do we know about these alternative blog and microblog platforms enough for us to get started on it to create enough conversation? That is definitely a question that, as we are kind of going through this change right now, you guys will need to be thinking about. Okay. All right. So where does public relations come in? And I know I spoke about this last week when we met in class. There's 5130 social marketing, there's 5140 social PR, and then there's Dr. Naja Shelley's PR campaign course. Professor, isn't this all redundant? Some of them may be, some of them are not. Okay. So when we are talking about anything public relations, right, we're thinking primarily about these four words. We're talking about relationship, it's already in the name. We're talking about engagement. We're talking about being strategic, that's being research-based. We're not just going to be that one random Norwegian company that opens up an Instagram account. We want to know what we're getting into, and every decision we make, we want it to be based on research so that it is strategic. Right. And we're also dealing with the responsibility of public relations being a public communicator. Right. And this is where all the ethics come in, us being mindful of misinformation and disinformation, and having a standard, an ethical standard in our communication. That all comes in because of the key purposes or key functions of public relations, as we know. So, in essence, one of the primary reasons why social media is emphasized in the context of public relations is because as a PR professionals, we're generally expected to know how to communicate in any type of media, any type of modality, if it's thrown at us. Right? We need to know how to write a press release. We need to know how to communicate with journalists. We need to know how to write on a blog, write on LinkedIn, create a video. We have always been trained to be a multimodality type of expert and communicators because we know that we need these media platforms to connect with our key public, right? So in this quadrant that you see here that is created by another social PR scholar named Dr. Gina Luttrell, she is explaining here that there are four quadrants of social media. So one is media, as we know, the journalists and whatnot. The community, that's the community that any of us are part of. There's a government, right? And there's also businesses. What you see here is that while these four quadrants of public relations, that these are the key publics that any type of public relations professionals communicate to, and these blue realm out here is usually the goal that they try to reach, right? So for government, it's about political lobbying, public affairs, issue management. For businesses, it's executive, C-level executive advisement, social care, investor relations. For media, it's about publicity, whatnot. Notice how social media in the outer realm can be used for all these purposes, right? It is because this has become such a prevalent channel that for any type of public relations objective or goal, social media can be sprinkled in there to achieve that particular type of goal. The modality of the communication that can occur is just as diverse on social media. We're not just talking about written text, we're talking about videos, photographs, and this is something that you guys will be practicing this semester for our class client, the College of Fine and Performing Communicative Arts, right? That you guys will be asked to create a reel, create a story, make a really nice, high quality photo to be posted on Instagram, but also be able to come up with the strategic hashtag, right? Be able to write the right type of caption or the explanation into the post, right? That all of and surprisingly, social media, thinking about the 4 quadrants of the public relations function, social media fits into all of them. So voila, right there. So in essence, because this is how close our communication on social media is to us having a successful public relations for any purposes, we need to be mindful that in any type of social communication that we do it strategically, that it's not just me randomly opening up an Instagram account or me just opening up a Mastodon because everybody's there or Twitter is no longer a thing. It needs to be based on the understanding of what our purpose is, as we talked about in that slide with the prism, but also who our audiences are, right? Because frankly, that's exactly the reason why, unlike Twitter, while people are losing interest or not finding it as relevant as it was before, Facebook is still a thing, that is still a platform that we need to be communicating on, right? Because we know that that's where most of our audiences are going to be. Twitter is going to be an interesting case for us to see over the month. I'll frankly be following this along myself for my own research purpose, and how people's motivation for staying on Twitter versus leaving Twitter is changing over the months. But, you know, this is the kind of strategic thinking that needs to happen when we are selecting our social accounts. And also, we need to be mindful that just because both informative and persuasive functions are possible on social media, we need to strike a balance, right? Because we don't want to sound like a professor on social because we focus too much on the education. We want to be interactive, but then at the same time, we don't want to be too interactive and too conversational so that our voice or our information is no longer considered as an expert information. Right? So that's the kind of fine balance that we need to think about in communicating and deciding how to communicate on social. So these are the 5 outcomes or 5 concepts that you need to think about when you decide why you want to use a certain social platform for your communication and public relations need. So is it relationship? Is it to demonstrate and showcase your personality? Are you more interested in the content? So if the content is the goal, then we're talking about blogs or LinkedIn posts. Innovativeness, this is probably one of the reasons why some of the newer niche social platforms are on the rise. For example, we're talking about Pinterest or Mastodon or Post, or even platforms like Substack, right? Are you trying to drive actions? Again, we're going to have to be in a wait and see mode for Twitter, because any type of public activist mobilization used to be happening on Twitter. We'll need to see which platform will take that particular role, or if that particular type of outcome that used to be achieved on Twitter as a social platform is still achievable. So we'll wait and see. So essentially, these are sort of the concluding remarks on why we need to understand social media, what we should understand about social media when we're thinking about it in the context of public relations. What remains the same is what we see as good PR. So it's based on research, it's based on planning. We need to have a clear and measurable objectives. This has always been the case for any type of well-executed PR effort. What is more emphasized in the social media environment for any type of public relations professional is, are you focusing on dialogue? Are you focusing on relationship? It's not just exchange. It's not just for the sake of being on social. Are you actually interested in utilizing these interactive modalities and interactive affordances on social media? As a PR professional, you're not only expected to create a content, but you're also expected to facilitate the contents when needed. You also need to know how to maintain your legitimacy and credibility. This has become a lot more emphasized because of what we've seen over the years with the misinformation and disinformation and overall distrust in any information that we find on social media. And finally, the aspect of verification. Can you counter argue a false information on your social platform and maintain that credibility? Because that's been a challenge for a lot of the health communicators out there. All right, so I hope this was something that could help. This lecture can help you kind of grasp the key concepts from week 1. Again, so sorry for having to change the modality at the last minute, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.